Thanks for tuning in to the Long Island Local Podcast, recorded here at Audio Workstations in Bohemia, New York. We are interviewing local business owners, entrepreneurs, trying to provide you with the best information on all types of products and services available right here on Long Island. I'm your host, Matt, and let's jump right into the conversation. Welcome, everyone, to the Long Island Local Podcast. I'm your host, Matt, and we are recording here at Audio Workstations in Bohemia. And today, we are lucky enough to have with us Marie Marsilio of the Cutting Edge Hair Design. And you can reach her website at cuttingedgecomac.com. And for those that don't know, Comac has 2 M's in it. Welcome, Marie.
Thank you. Great to be here.
It's nice to have you. We want everyone to know where they can find and support local businesses. So thanks for coming.
Thank you.
What year did you found your company? When did you get started?
I started my business in 2006. So we just had October 31st, Halloween was the 15-year anniversary to the day that I signed my lease. So it's been...
And what, I know Comac, maybe the listeners don't, but just for reference, what spot in Comac are you at?
So I'm on Jericho Turnpike. I'm kind of in the middle between Comac Road and Larkfield Road, which are 2 of the major roads. We're across the street from Dick's Sporting Goods. It's a big shopping center, so most people are familiar with that. We're right across the street in the same shopping center as the Rock Underground and Fountain.
Okay, yeah, I know that spot, actually. Okay. I've driven by many times. Awesome. I have a clear visual in my head, but everyone else use Google Maps if you don't have a clear visual in your head of where we're talking about. When you started your business, what was the inspiration for starting and for doing it?
So basically, I knew from an early age that I wanted to do hair. Like, it was always just something that I was passionate about. I went to, beauty school while I was in high school, and I had been working in salons from the time I was 16 years old. And right before I decided to open my own salon, I was pretty much running the salon that I was in. Like, I was, doing all of the stuff that an owner would do, except I didn't have any of the benefits of being an owner.
Uh-huh.
So I kind of was like, you know what? I could do this. Like, why am I doing this for someone else and not being appreciated? That was like the other key part, that I maybe if I had like a really awesome boss that kind of valued the position that I was in, I might have never gotten the itch to do my own thing.
I can relate to that,
but,
actually. Yes.
So I'm like, you know what, I'm going to do it. And I just decided, I was young. I'm like, now's the time to do it. I don't have any other responsibility in my life. I can kind of go all in. And if it doesn't work out, I'm still living at home. It's not like my parents are going to throw me out on the street. So it was a good time to take that risk.
Gotcha.
So.
And was it scary at the time, or were you more excited?
I was pretty excited. Like, looking back on it now, I'm like, oh my God, that was terrifying. I probably would not take that risk now, but I guess not having so much life experience and being naive kind of worked in my favor a little bit. I kind of just, took the jump, and I didn't really think about failure. I just thought, like, this is something I want to do, and I'm going to do it.
Yeah, I think perhaps being entrepreneurial is an area where ignorance can be bliss.
Right.
If you don't know all the things, all the problems that you might run into, it's probably better that you don't know when you start, because they might discourage you.
Right.
And ultimately, you're going to get through those things one at a time. It's just a question of not psyching yourself out too badly beforehand.
Exactly.
So, right. I like that. So beforehand, I know that you worked in the previous salon. Was there any other jobs that you did prior to getting into it, or you were just like, you knew from right away that you wanted to do that?
I worked in retail as like my first job. I worked in Stearns. It's not even around anymore,
okay.
But I just did that just to get a job and do my first job. It certainly wasn't something that I was passionate about, but, I did it. And then once I started beauty school, that's when I decided to get into the salon industry and, work as an assistant, work my way up in the hair salon.
That's cool. And do you have other stylists that work for you now?
I do. I have 3 other stylists and 3 assistants.
How does that work? Are they employees, or are they like independent contractors who are renting space?
In my salon, they're all employees.
Okay.
Yep.
And is that common? Because I'm not completely familiar with what the norm is in that.
It varies. Sometimes they're, independent contractors or they'll rent a chair, or they're commission-based. Sometimes they're employees. The salon industry is kind of constantly changing. Right now, you'll see opening up, there's more of like salon suites. So it's like stylists are going out on their own, and instead of like opening their own salon, they're opening like a little store with like their own chair or whatever.
Yeah.
That's becoming more and more popular. I like the fact of having a team, of working with a team, inspiring each other, helping each other, formulate colors, or just, venting about clients. And, I would miss that aspect of being in a salon.
Yeah, the community and collaboration
Right.
type aspect of it.
Yeah.
And, it is a different sort of environment when people are working for you and
Right.
they are, especially if they like you, right?
Right. Well, that's key.
That sort of is the key, right? Like if you
Yeah.
if you have that person in charge who is people want to work for, I
Right.
think that's going to make all the difference as to
Yeah.
whether that model works versus
Right.
a more independent
Yeah.
minded model.
And I work in the salon, like I still do hair, that's the part that I'm like really passionate about. So, the fact that I'm there and I'm like working side by side with the girls, it's, you also form a different relationship as opposed to me just like owning it and them working for me.
Yeah, they're going to
So,
respect you more because you're doing what they're doing.
Right.
You're not just like overseeing them,
Yeah.
you're actively doing it at the same time. So so they value your opinion and
Yeah.
on the specifics, not just on the managerial
Right.
stuff, right? That's cool. And I think that if you are really passionate about that itself, it's important that you continue to do it directly and not just oversee, because then you'd be disconnected from the thing that got you into it.
Absolutely.
And the reason for it. I can relate to that because, we started Audio Workstations as a way to get freelance audio engineers like ourselves better access to studios and equipment without having to be beholden to like the boss character who you may not want to work for, because there's some out there in the world.
Right.
And you can find yourself in a scenario where you don't get access to the facility you need to do the work unless you are, having to be with this boss character. And so we wanted to eliminate that. But at the same time, I still like doing sessions. I don't want to just rent other people's rooms. I want to work with
Right.
artists myself. It's the reason why we created the studio, is so, we could all do that and be our own bosses. But, if we go back in time to other places that I've worked, if I was working for more charismatic characters, I might not have gotten the bug to go out and do
Right.
my own thing quite as much.
Right.
But it's interesting how that works. There's good bosses and bad bosses out
Yes,
there.
yeah.
Sometimes bad bosses make new entrepreneurs accidentally.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
I guess we should give them credit for that. So,
Right.
credit to all you bad bosses out there.
Right.
You inspire people to stop working for you and go work for themselves.
Yeah.
And I think that we've seen a lot of that overall in the country as a whole.
Oh, absolutely.
During
Yeah.
the, pandemic, post-pandemic, whatever you want to
Right.
define our current times.
I think it kind of gave people like a chance to just reflect, like, what am I doing? Like, what, day to day, the rat race. And, when you're forced to take a step back and kind of evaluate what's going on, it makes you, think about the path that you're on. So,
Yeah, it kind of gives you that moment that maybe you didn't otherwise have to
Right.
to contemplate. I was talking with a guest earlier about transitioning from, working for a different industry that maybe you didn't love, but you're good at it, and then figuring out how to get and do your own thing, how to
Right.
get into that mindset. And I think before the pandemic, you would really have to discipline, like, I'm going to take a few minutes every day and think about how I'm going to get out of whatever situation I'm in without sacrificing security. But it's sort of like if everyone says you have to go home and you can't work, then you're forcing people to
Right.
really think about how
Right.
badly did you want to work at that place anyway?
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
what can you use this time that you now have to figure out your next move
Right.
that maybe you might enjoy more?
Right.
So how did you find the whole pandemic experience through your business?
It was, surreal. I mean, if someone had told us, 2 years ago that we would be mandated to shut down our business for 3 months and not have any control over it, you would be like, there's no way that would happen. Yet here we are.
It just sounds like kind of insane proposal out
Right.
of context.
At first it was like, okay, 2 weeks we'll shut down and let's let this thing pass. And, and then 2 weeks turned into, we were mandated 3 months, we were shut down.
Yeah,
And,
us too.
it was, again, it wasn't just us, obviously, it was everyone. My clients, we stayed in contact with them through Facebook, and, we begged them and encouraged them not to try to do their own hair at home and to hold out
Yeah.
for us. And then, eventually I got the idea to start doing like color kits that I would mail to my clients' houses. And it was like their formula that they would apply themselves. I did like a Facebook video, like tutorial of how to apply your own hair color. And
That's really smart because then you're providing them with their own colors and stuff.
Exactly.
And
So their own color
it.
and it's professional products. So they're not, using cheap products on their hair.
But
and it just kept us in contact.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, and as much as the 3 months was so hurtful here on Long Island, it's crazy that there are, like places in the country where it's longer. It's kind of bizarre.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, everything about it. But I'm glad that we got through it. And that's honestly one of the inspirational reasons that we thought about starting the podcast. It's like, okay, we know inevitably that there are probably businesses that did not get through that time.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And so those of us who are still left standing, it's like, I want to see who we are, talk to each other and figure out if there's, just ways that we can sort of be a little bit more community minded. I feel like
love that.
Sometimes Long Island may suffer from Manhattan adjacentness in the sense that like it's easy to kind of go through your day with a narrow focus of what you have to do that day and not sort of think about the larger community that you're interacting with.
Right.
And so we found ourselves like here, we got a new facility recently and opened more rooms. And, we got curious, like who else is here trying to do their thing at this moment in time? And can we talk to them and can we bring them into our studios and ask them questions on our fancy mics? And so we thank you for allowing us to do that because it's insightful and it's helpful to try and figure out all the little pivots and moves that people had to make to still stay in touch with customers and still stay whatever type of busy that they could, during the hardest times when someone's telling you can't like do normal business. Right.
Because we're all navigating it, but there's no like guide or how to. It's kind of just like all new to all of us, just kind of getting through it. And still so many businesses are struggling.
Yeah. And, there's some silver linings, I think, in that like maybe certain technologies we've all been forced to get better at using.
Right.
And so now we have more tools at our disposal. And the idea of remote being an option for a lot of businesses that would have considered there being no remote option in their industry. It's like, okay, well, now you really have to get creative and figure out how to do something remotely that has to do with your business. And at least now, even the businesses that are more in person, you at least have like an extra thing that you can offer on top now, and be able to do some outreach that maybe goes beyond the super local foot trafficy type of thing, where hey, maybe you can mail a hair color kit to someone who's like out of state, or if a customer moves away and is like, I'm going to Florida or whatever. You can still keep in touch. And ordinarily that would have been maybe someone who you lost completely, but now you have this idea that you had to employ during the lockdown times that can just be an extra thing that you're offering now. So I appreciated that. I had a Zoom call before the pandemic and I was like, what's this weird teleconferencing app that the website company wants me to use to talk to them? And I actually went down to their office and I was confused. I thought we were having an in-person meeting. It turns out they were doing a Zoom meeting. But this is before the pandemic. I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
And then I looked at the email they sent me and I clicked the link. And I was like, I sat in my car a few blocks away from their office where the guy who owned the company was at home. And I had a meeting with him. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. This works. And then a month later, everybody was using Zoom for everything.
Yeah, for everything.
Yeah, but now we're a lot better at it. And lots of people who had nothing to do with audio engineering are familiar with mute buttons, whereas they didn't really have such an awareness of the power of the mute button.
Some people are still not aware, but
that's true. I spent years teaching people how to mute things. But no, it's so simple, but it's so important to keep that background noise out. Okay, awesome. So I'm glad that you were able to have at least some outreach during that lockdown time. I'm so glad that lockdown time is over. Now, today, where we are now, what are some of the biggest challenges that you're facing currently?
One of the biggest challenges has always been staffing, even pre-pandemic, but, after the pandemic, it's a challenge to find people, that, one, want to work. And then, two, they have to show up, but they don't just have to show up. They have to be talented as well. So it's definitely, it's a hard combination to find someone that's artistic, that's passionate, that's also reliable.
I can relate to that in the music world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's, it's hard to find that balance. And right now, I have a really good like core staff right now that I'm very thankful for. One of the girls who works for me, Raina, she's like my right-hand girl, and she kind of just like really, she stepped up and she treats the salon like it's her own. And that's, very fortunate. And then, I have some new younger stylists that bring a whole different type of energy to the salon. So that's really great. I used to be the new younger stylist, and it's like now I'm, on the other side.
Yeah.
So we have a good dynamic in the salon.
Now I'm curious because it is obviously an artistic thing, but you also have like, formal school that and
Right.
And I can relate to that with audio and music where there's a certain amount of formal training, but at the same time, you can get the training, but if you don't have sort of an artistic spark in you that
Right.
you want to create new things and you want to, it's like a bunch of tools that you're given. It's not necessarily a procedure that you can follow every time
Right.
for success.
Exactly.
And so you have to take a bunch of technical knowledge, but then you have to combine it with an actual desire to create something interesting and have a willingness to use all those tools creatively.
Right.
And so how much do you think is in the training versus in the like inner vision of the stylist?
I don't want to say it depends on the person really, because some people can be very technical and, and do a great job. And then other people are like not technical at all and they just go on instinct. In the beginning of my career, I would say I was more based on instinct. Like I'd be mixing color in the back and like praying like, oh my God, I hope this comes out okay.
Right.
And then it's like, then you start to kind of learn the science behind it. But there's still times where you're formulating something or you're thinking about, an angle of the cut of someone's hair. And it's, you're thinking about all the technical stuff, but then you just kind of go with your feeling too. Because that's where that artistic, creative part comes in.
And I think the more technical knowledge you acquire and pick up along the way, the more sharpened your instincts become, even if you're not super aware of what technical scientific thing am I calling upon subconsciously
Right.
in order to say, well, I'm just going to do it like this.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's a good point because in the past I've been an educator for color companies. And when I would have to break it down and explain to, the stylist that I was teaching, like what I was doing, like I had to stop and think like, okay, I'm doing this, but like, why am I doing this? Because it would just come natural to me. But when you're trying to teach it to somebody else, it's like you have to think about, okay, well, this is why,
And you end up learning, right, while
Right.
teaching. I
Absolutely.
did
Yeah.
teaching for like 10 years. And,
Okay.
there was definitely a evolution over 10 years of like, I know stuff, but now I'm explaining it. It forces me to get more familiar with the why, and it forces me to like understand it better every time I explain it.
Right.
And then when I hit like the 8, 9, 10-year mark, I was like, okay, I'm getting sick of explaining stuff.
Yeah.
But there was that period where it definitely made me better at doing the thing.
Right.
Just by talking about doing the thing so much and finding new words and new ways to explain to kind of match the different learning mindsets that people
Absolutely,
come
yeah.
to you with. And sometimes you end up explaining something in a new way that you never thought about before just because somebody kind of looked at you funny and asked you a question you had never heard.
Right.
And it it can happen on the fly, I think, while you're teaching and explaining like new ways of understanding.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's cool. And so when did you do the color? That was for other companies, the
Yeah.
color education?
So I use a color company called Rusk, and I was an educator for them for about 7 years. I stopped once I started my family because I just couldn't fit it all in. But I would basically go around the country. I would teach other stylists how to cut and color using their Rusk's products. So Rusk would train me, and then I would go out and train other stylists and other salons.
Okay,
So,
and that was a travel kind of a gig?
yeah. I would go for training like a couple times a year. They would usually do it in Florida. We would go down for a week, and it would be a group of, Rusk artists, and they would train us on, their techniques, upcoming products, new things that were coming out. And then we would come back. And I was primarily like New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, where I would go into salons and teach them how to use the product.
Okay, so first you go learn about it at the company, and then you go into the salons and give like a product demonstration that ends up being educational as well.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
So it was like a twofold. Like, it was great to be able to teach and earn the extra income and get all of the knowledge, but also back in my salon, like, my clients loved that I was like getting all of this exclusive, training, and I would have new products before they came out to the rest of the salons.
That's cool.
So it was a lot of fun.
Do you still utilize that color company?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
I do.
Shout out to Rusk.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good to know.
Yeah.
That it was a long-term kind of relationship with the color company that they actually make good stuff that you still use.
Yeah.
Very cool. What is your favorite part? I think I know the answer to this, but I'm not going to assume because I think you dropped a hint. But what's your favorite part of your work?
So my favorite part is doing the actual hair. Like, it's the hands-on part. It's, being behind the chair, working with, new people every day. My clients, some of them have been with me for 20 years. So, you form a connection with people, not just based on their hair, but they, when someone sits in my chair, it's like the floodgates open and they tell me everything.
Yeah, it's sort of like the bartender effect,
exactly,
I guess.
Exactly. So you form relationships with people, and it's great. It's to make people, feel that comfortable where they can come and talk to you, and then to make people feel good about themselves and happy with the way they look. It's just, it's a great feeling.
And it's like a art canvas that is always changing, right? You get to remake it. And how often do people, I'm just curious, stay like really consistent with what they like in their hair? And how often are people like adventurous, like, let's change it up?
The majority of my clientele is more consistent. It's women that are covering their gray hair. So it's like they're coming every 4 weeks, they're getting a touch up. I do have, a handful of clients that, do more trendier things. It's, the clients that come in and change their hair every time are kind of like few and far between as far as my clientele goes. My younger stylists, they have more of that. But like, my favorite thing that a client will say to me is like, do whatever you want. Like, do what you think will look best. And that's like when I'm like, okay, good. I have free reign to just, make them look their best.
That's cool. That's like when you go to the restaurant or like the sushi bar and you say, let the chef give me whatever they want. I trust them. Let me get surprised.
Right.
That's cool. I'm scared to admit I cut my own hair because there's so little of it that I just kind of get it really short, and then it gets about this length and I start thinking I should cut it off again. So I don't have any interesting hair stories myself other than the time that the attachment for the buzzer popped off and I went shorter than I meant to go and then had to commit to a shorter cut. But that's cool. I think if I had a lot of hair, I might be the adventurous type who wants to change it all the time.
Okay.
But since I don't, I'm just the conservative type who just takes it to the same short length all the time. What is the thing that you love most about the business? Not necessarily the work itself, but the business as a whole.
I definitely like being in control. I like being the decision maker. I don't think I could ever have a partner because I feel like I like to have the final say, and I work a lot on instinct. So it's like to have to explain like why I'm making this decision would be tough. Like, cause it's kind of just like, I'm just doing it cause it feels right. So
I understand.
But I definitely like, I like the point that I'm at now, especially 15 years in. In the beginning, it was, so much work and so much blood, sweat, and tears. And, it was consumed me. Now I only work 3 days a week behind the chair, and it's allowed me to have a really good like work-life balance. So
I was going to use that phrase. I was going to say, it sounds like you've achieved the mythical work-life balance. It's good to know that does exist in the land of entrepreneurship. And so it is good to hear if anyone's out there on the starting your own business side. It will consume you for a while, and then hopefully eventually you can achieve the balance. Yeah. But I like that. I like that it's not like 7 days a week, 24 hours for you anymore.
Yeah, no, not anymore. It's definitely, it's nice,
And it sounds like you do have a team that you can trust. And I think that's probably a huge part of being able to step away and relax, take a day or multiple days off, and not be worried the whole time.
Right.
Yeah, that's going to be huge. So shout out to your staff. They sound awesome.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. They are.
Yeah. We're gonna step into the sci-fi portion of the show, and we're going to go backwards in time, where you can talk to the younger version of yourself, who is sometime pre-business or early days of business, any time that you like, and you can give some life advice to younger you, what do you think that advice might be?
I would have to say, you know, now I feel like life is so hectic and busy. Like back then I had so much free time and you don't really appreciate all the free time you have. And when you're, when you're younger and you're just starting out, like do as much as you can to, forward your career and invest as much time and energy into it. Because one, you have a lot more energy.
Yeah, you don't realize the waning energy factor.
Sometimes it takes years. It takes a long time for things to pay off. So like the earlier, the sooner you get a head start on that, like it's putting, the work in progress and it's laying that foundation for it. In the beginning, I was 22. I opened a business. Thank God I was doing well. And, I was enjoying being in the moment and I wish I would have maybe, just been a little more focused on growing the business and the brand. And like I have, the last couple of years, I've been wanting to start my own product line and I just don't have the time to do it. And I'm like, if I would have done this in the beginning, like maybe, who knows, but
well, there's still time. What type of products are you thinking about?
Like brands, my own brand for like shampoos, conditioners, styling products, stuff like that.
Okay.
I've taken some steps to start and then something's always comes up. I have 3 little kids at home, so it's on my to-do list, you know what I mean? But I feel like if I had thought about that back then, it would have been done. Like there wouldn't have been nothing stopping me from doing it. I would have been able to just focus on that and get it done and.
Gotcha.
But your priorities change as you go through life and you get older. And, when you're young, you don't have that, you don't have, a mortgage and you don't have or so much responsibility that you can kind of take chances a little bit more. And
yeah. So make a list of those chances that you might want to take while you're still young. It's going to be easier to get at it.
Yeah. And save your money too. Me and my husband talk about this all the time. We're like, the stupid things that we spent money on that you just, you don't think about it when you're young,
Yeah.
But
that's a good advice right there. I spoke with a personal shopper earlier today, and I talked about how every time I go to the grocery store, I find 5 new expensive things that I didn't walk in there to buy, and I'm yelling at myself on the way out, but hoping they're delicious.
Yeah.
Okay, now we'll move off of the business stuff and just on a personal level, what do you do when you are off to unwind? What is like a hobby or an activity that allows you to clear your mind so that when you go back to the business, you have the type of focus that you need?
Well, it used to be before starting a family, it used to be like I would go get a massage, I would go shopping, I would get my nails done, things to like pamper myself and just kind of like reset and relax. Now I joke that being at work is my relaxing time. So I'm like, when I'm at work, I get to have a hot cup of coffee and actually finish it. I get to go to the bathroom by myself. Like I'm like, that's my downtime when I'm working.
Okay. All right. I accept that. The zen of the hairstyling and the complete coffee cup. All right. Well, listen, there's a lot of power in being really passionate about what you do. I love the fact that even though you're the owner of the salon, that you still like to actually style hair yourself, that's the reason why you got into it is still the thing that you find the most relaxing, even to unwind.
Right.
That's awesome. All right. Well, Marie, thank you so much for coming in to talk to us today. I really enjoyed getting to know, your whole journey from working for someone else to working for yourself, being the boss of other hairstylists, but still wanting to do hair yourself and actually feeling like it's a chance for you to unwind from stress. That really says to me that you're doing the right thing for you and that anyone who's coming in to get their hair done by you is, they're working with someone who really cares about what they're doing, and that's important. So thank you so much for coming in today. Just as a reminder to everyone listening, we're talking to Marie from The Cutting Edge Hair Design, and the website is cuttingedgecomac.com, and it is in Comac, right in between a bunch of awesome landmarks that we talked about earlier today. So check out cuttingedgecomac.com for all of your hairstyling needs. Unfortunately, you won't be styling my hair because there's just not enough of it to talk about. So again, thank you so much for coming in, and we hope to talk to you again soon. So everyone, thanks for listening, and have a good one. Thanks everyone for tuning in to the Long Island Local Podcast. If you're interested in studio membership programs for music production or content creation, please visit audioworkstationsinc.com. And please check out our guest of today's podcast. We enjoy having on all local entrepreneurs. If you'd like to be considered for a featured interview on our podcast, please contact LongIslandLocalPodcast@gmail.com.